Greetings, fellow humans. Katrina here. Quick disclaimer, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm not your counselor. Anything I'm about to say should not be taken as legal, medical, or otherwise advice. Everything I'm about to say is for amusement and entertainment. That is it. Disclaimer over. Last week, I went over some cognitive distortions, and like I mentioned, I don't know all of them. I did find an article on Psychology Today that lists like 50. Rather than doing that, I thought I'd stick to about five and do five different ones than I talked about last week. So this week I'll start with magnification or minimization, really. That is where we blow things way out of proportion. That's the magnification. Or the minimization is where you shrink importance of something inappropriately. Oh, it wasn't that bad. That kind of thing. Another is emotional reasoning. That is when you reason from how you feel. So if I feel like an idiot or if I feel stupid, then I must be that way. That's emotional reasoning. So another one might be, I don't feel like doing this, so I'll put it off. So because I feel some type of way, then it must be so. That's not always the case. I can be a highly intelligent person and feel stupid every once in a while. It's just an emotion, it's just a button. And I'll explain my button metaphor real quick. If you think of a remote controller having all those different buttons on it, our emotions are like the button getting pushed. And ideally, the button gets pushed. That feeling fuels whatever validation, communication, or motivation needed for that emotion. And then it gets released. It gets let go. It changes. Our emotions are constantly changing unless those buttons get stuck. That's a story for a different time. But emotional reasoning, one of those buttons get pushed, then it must be true. That's not reality. So to untwist that, you would maybe say something like, I recognize that I'm feeling this way, and feelings aren't facts. That's one way to untwist it. Another cognitive distortion is should statements. I ask folks sometimes if they should on themselves, because when I say I should do this, I must do that, I ought to, I have to, those are all similar ways to criticize oneself or other people. If you've ever had that feeling of resentment, it's usually accompanied with a thought of they should have listened to me or something similar. Resentment can be shooting on other people, and we can get angry or frustrated shooting on ourselves. So it's not recommended. And I would actually say that there are some shoulds that are useful, some are useless, and some are just pretty neutral. A useful should is I should brush my teeth, and then I have a pretty smile because I do. And that's a useful should, where there's others such as I should have picked a different sweater today. That's not useful because I'm already wearing the sweater that I'm in now. I can't go back to this morning and change it, but I can most certainly stir myself up into a frenzy thinking that I shoulda, coulda, woulda picked a different sweater. So to untwist that, we might have a little bit of acceptance of how things are now. I should have picked a different sweater can be untwisted with, I picked this sweater today, maybe I'll choose a different sweater tomorrow. Looking at what we can do in the moment, keeping ourselves present and mindful can be a useful way to stay out of those cognitive distortions. Another cognitive distortion that is labeling. So that is when you identify, it's when we identify with our shortcomings. So instead of saying, I made a mistake, labeling would be, I'm a jerk, I'm a fool, I'm a loser. Calling those names to oneself isn't useful. In fact, it's kind of sometimes people say motivating, but not in a really helpful way. It's kind of like beating yourself over the back with a stick rather than hanging a carrot out and encouraging to get something. The labeling is like putting a big flashing neon sign over identifying with an attribute or a shortcoming. If I'm making a mistake, that's it. It's just a mistake. It doesn't mean anything about me in any type of way. So try to stay away from labeling. And if you notice yourself labeling, challenge that. Challenge it with something like, no, that's not true. I'm not a loser. And it's not always a loser or winner type of situation. That's kind of an all or nothing thought. If you're always winning or always losing, there's not always a game to play in life. It's not always about winning and losing. And so, one final one for today is personalization and blame. That is when one blames oneself for something that they're not entirely responsible for, or blaming other people and overlooking ways that our own attitudes and behavior might contribute to a problem. So, all of those are different cognitive distortions that I got straight out of David Burns' Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy, written back in the 80s. And there are actually other ways to change how we're feeling besides just changing our thoughts. But for cognitive restructuring, that's what therapists will have you focus on, is let's untwist that thought. And I might even have to do another episode entirely on how to untwist those thoughts. There's several different methods for doing so. I only named a couple, and I don't even think I named them. I just explained how to do it. So there's several different ways to untwist one's thoughts, and you can find those on the internet, or stay tuned for another episode later on. If you'd like to support the show, click the button on the website. And remember, I do appreciate each and every one of you simply for existing.